And the court had to ask a modern question. What counts as cruelty in 2025? When the harm isn't always a slap, sometimes it's a slow, emotional suffocation. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today it's straight to the matter. Let me ask you guys something uncomfortable. If paying the bills was proof of love, half of us would be married to our landlords. Si ni kweli? I'm serious because that's the cultural math that this case puts on trial. I'll start with the big picture first, then we'll go to the details. Because most people don't actually know how divorce works in Kenya. In Kenya, you don't just wake up one day and say, I'm done. And the court says, sawa. No. You must give the court a legal reason, what the law calls a ground, okay? Depending on the kind of marriage, the grounds include things like adultery, cruelty, desertion, exceptional depravity, or like irretrievable breakdown. Those are hard to prove, okay? So when you go to court, you're not just telling a sad story. You're proving a ground, okay? And that's why this case is very novel. Because the ground the husband relied on was cruelty and a desertion. And the court had to ask a modern question. What counts as cruelty in 2025? When the harm isn't always a slap, sometimes it's a slow, emotional suffocation. Now let's do the story in order. This is JKS versus JGI. The husband, JKS, filed the divorce case first. Eldoret Magistrates Court in Divorce Court 34 of 2020. So, the magistrate was asked to dissolve the marriage on grounds including cruelty, desertion, and neglect, saying this marriage had broken down. The wife, JGI, opposed the divorce. In fact, she denied his claims and asked the court to dismiss the petition immediately. So they were sent to court annex mediation in Eldoret. It failed. So the case went back to the magistrate court. And the magistrate court dismissed the divorce petition. Not paused. Not you guys go cool off. No, it dismissed it. It meant mnarudiana mpende msipende. Meaning the marriage stayed intact in law. Now, the logic the magistrate leaned into was this. And this is the part every Kenyan will recognize. Family unity. The idea that marriages should be preserved. That endurance is virtue. That staying is always better than leaving. Hey! So the husband appealed. And this is important. He's the one who appealed. He went to the High Court at Eldoret. For guys who like looking up things, the appeal is Civil Appeal E009 of 2023. Decided by Justice R.N. Nyakundi. So from this point on, when we say the court, we're talking about the High Court, okay? We're reviewing everything what the magistrate did, okay? Now, why does this appeal matter? Because the High Court wasn't just retelling the story. It was checking whether the magistrate applied the law properly, especially on one explosive question. Did the husband prove cruelty or desertion as grounds for divorce? Or did the magistrate set the bar so high that it traps people in dead marriages? Now, let's talk about why the husband said he was being treated cruelly. This wasn't ambod, nimechoka kwa heri. No, he alleged a pattern. Disrespect, constant conflict, threats, lack of communication, prolonged separation, denial of conjugal life. That's something all of you guys I know. He also complained about desertion. 2 periods of separation, one early in marriage, another around 2019. And this is where the case becomes modern. Because when Kenyans hear the word cruelty, most people think, nani amechapwa? Who was beaten? The High Court said, slow down. Because cruelty is not only physical. Cruelty can be mental. Cruelty can be conduct that causes anguish and psychological suffering. And the court made a key point ordinary people should understand here. In cases without obvious violence, don't obsess over ticking boxes of specific acts. Look at the effect. What did the conduct do to the person living through it? See, the wife did not sit back quietly. She fought the appeal hata huko. Ride or die. Wendi mahali. She told the High Court that the magistrate got it right and the appeal should be dismissed. She even argued if anyone had been subjected to cruelty, it was her. So this was not a friendly separation. This was a legal fight over who crossed the legal threshold for divorce. Now here's what the High Court did. And this is why this case is Katiba na chai worthy. it didn't just announce divorce granted like a TikTok breakup. No. It went back to the grounds for divorce and examined whether the evidence that was before it had met them. On desertion, the High Court said the magistrate did not properly analyze it. Because desertion is not just leaving the house, it's withdrawal from obligations of marriage life. Without consent, without reasonable cause, without an intention to end cohabitation, and with an intention to end cohabitation. So the court said the periods of separation mattered and were not treated with the seriousness the law requires. But then, the court addressed something Kenyans don't like discussing publicly: denial of conjugal rights. Now, the High Court noted that the magistrate mentioned it only in passing, but the persistent deprivation of conjugal life without sufficient cause can form part of cruelty. Yes, a marriage can harm without leaving a bruise. And then came the line that stings. The High Court said the magistrate was wrong to coerce and force the parties to go back and sustain a marriage that was essentially on life support. Life support. Because that's what many people are living in. Okay, not personal, but a marriage is paperwork, but no pulse. And this is where the novelty becomes clear. Because for the longest time, courts have always needed the grounds for divorce, and cruelty has always been one of them. But older instinct, cultural, sometimes even judicial, treated cruelty like it had to be look dramatic, screaming, blood, scandal. No. But this judgment widened the lens. It treats cruelty as something that can be psychological, a pattern, a prolonged environment of mental anguish. Not ordinary wear and tear, not small fights, but conduct that makes married life unbearable. And it recognizes that desertion and denial of conjugal rights can feed into that cruelty. So what was the outcome? The High Court allowed the appeal. It set aside the magistrate's decision, meaning it granted the divorce. It dissolved the marriage, and there were no orders as to cost. Story. So, if you're watching this and wondering what's the lesson for ordinary people, here it is. 1. In Kenya, you need legal grounds for divorce. You must plead and then prove them. 2. Cruelty isn't only fists. It can be mental cruelty and emotional abandonment. 3. Courts are increasingly willing to keep adults trapped in marriage theater for the sake of appearances. 4. Sometimes, for the family is love. And sometimes, for the family is coercion wearing a moral suit. So the old courts used to ask, can this marriage be saved? This case asked, at what cost and to whom? And that shift is why this episode matters. That has been Katiba. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you in the next episode.